On November the 15th, I staged a cocktail party in my flat in central London to launch the book. Invited a couple of hundred people, about 60 or 70 turned up, including a lot of the leading journalists from Fleet Street, because I'm good news always. And on this occasion, I was better news than they'd thought, because among the people I'd invited was the Minister of Defence, Alan Clark. He's been a friend of mine for 15 years. He's a historian. We do what historians do. We correspond. We help each other. He wrote a famous book called Barbarossa on the German attack on Russia, and he's written a couple of books since then, and he's a bit of a history buff, and he's Ministry of Defence in John Major's cabinet. And I invited him along with all my other pals in Fleet Street, and it's years since I've last seen him at a cocktail party, and you can understand why. There's been the occasional member of Parliament there, but never a minister. But about 8:10, the bell rang, and I looked at my TV screen, and it was Alan Clark. And I thought, who is that? He said, this is Alan, David. I'm coming up. So he came up. He took me into my study, past the astonished eyes of the gaping English pressmen, who thought they recognized that face. Once inside my office, and let me describe my study to you in London. It's a very big room, about half the size of this room, and on one wall there are 3 framed copies of Adolf Hitler's newspaper, the Völkische Beobachter, historic issues, and on another wall is pictures of Bismarck, and there's the only self-portrait of Adolf Hitler. I think some of you have probably seen it, and shelves of books and so on. And Alan Clark went over to one of these Nazi newspapers, which had a photograph of Hitler on the front page, and he pointed to the Führer, and he said, there's no question in my mind, this was one of the greatest people who lived this century. He said, it's a pity that we don't have somebody like that in Britain right now, because he's just the kind of person we need in Britain right now to do to Britain what he did to Germany in the 1930s. He said there's no question at all that he is one of the most inspiring figures and characters of European history this century. I, of course, as they say, remained receptive. I thought he has a hidden microphone somewhere. I mean, who knows? I didn't say anything. But he just went on and on and on in this vein. And he said, you know, Irving, when I decided to come to this cocktail party this evening, and can I have a copy of the book, by the way? And I said, why not? He said, I have a Churchill book too. So he took a Churchill book. It was quite an expensive evening for me, his visit. He said, could I have a plastic bag to take them home in? He didn't want to be seen carrying them, I don't think. He said, when my permanent undersecretary looked in my appointment calendar this evening and they saw your name down, he went out and he came back in with the 2 junior under-assistant permanent secretaries, and the 3 of them came to my office this afternoon and they said, Minister, we don't think you ought to go to that cocktail party. It's asking for trouble. You do realize the problems you will be causing if you attend a cocktail party by David Irving. And Alan Clark said to me, Irving, I decided to come because I decided it was time to show my colours. As the Germans say, Farbe bekennen. So, I mean, occasionally I think in German, and I thought to myself, Hut up. Hats off to him, because here's a Minister of the Crown deciding to show his colours, and although I have been under attack in London now for the last 12 months, and this kind of thing makes me not so much famous as notorious in Britain. Anyway, Alan Clark, he said this, and I said, well, I'm glad you've decided to show, I had to admire your honesty, Minister, and so on. And he helped himself to a little cocktail sausage, and there were no cocktail sticks lying around, so he took one of these things and he stuck it into the sausage, munching the cocktail sausage. He then marched out past the assembled journalists using an Adolf Hitler's personal standard here as his cocktail stick. The next morning, the Evening Standard, London's evening paper, which has a whole-page gossip page called the Londoner's Diary, telephoned me saying, we heard rumours that was Alan Clark that we saw at your party last night. So I said, his pen is finally dropped, has it? They said, would you confirm that he was there, the Minister of Defence? And I said, yes, I'll confirm he was there. Would you tell us what he told you? So I said, no, that's for him to tell you. But we understand you had a long private talk with him in your study. I said, yes, we had an exchange of views, and we realised that we share views on many matters of historical interest. What views would they be? And I said, well, there I'm again. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to discuss this with the Minister of Defence himself, because it wouldn't be proper for me to tell you his views. And you'll wonder why I have therefore told you in this less than confidential circle what his views are. Well, the reason is this. Almost immediately after the Londoner's Diary made this their main story that evening, and it ran for 3 days as a major sensation in the London newspapers during November, that the Minister of Defence had attended my launching party for this book. And of course, I deeply deprecated the amount of publicity this gave my book, as you can imagine. Almost immediately, the Jewish newspaper, the Jewish Chronicle, decided that he was going to have to be castigated for this. And so they castigated him in the way that Jewish newspapers do. They hauled him over the coals. They smeared him. They vilified him. They demanded his resignation. Letters were written to all the national newspapers demanding that he should resign. And in fact, 2 weeks ago, he was obliged finally to resign for having attended my cocktail party. This is the strength of the people we're up against here. And yet, the reason that I've revealed to you what he privately said to me is that while he was trying to defend himself in the last week before he's finally obliged to resign, he decided the correct way to do it was to give Irving a bit of a kick. So his office, not him, but his office, issued a communique to the press saying that, of course, the Minister of Defence did attend my cocktail party, but he deeply deprecates and deplores my private views and my views on historical matters, and he doesn't share any matters of consequence. We have no opinions that are the same on matters. And I thought to myself, well, if he is obliged to do that, then I shall have to teach him where manners begins.